Hi and welcome to Home Assistant How-To with Bearded Thinker. Today we will be installing Shelly 1L without neutral wire to Home Assistant. Well, not in fact into Home Assistant, but I'll be installing it inside my bathroom and we will be integrating it inside Home Assistant. We'll start in 10 seconds. As always, before we go any further, I really would like to thank all the members who have joined my channel on the YouTube. Thank you very much, your support really means a lot. And also, thanks to everybody who subscribed, liked or watched my videos. Thank you. And now, let's get started with today's video. Today we will be covering installation of the Shelly 1L relay inside Home Assistant. I will be installing it inside my bathroom. But unfortunately, although I did capture everything, meaning the installation of the bypass inside the vent in the bathroom, and also the installation inside the switch box, the quality of that is not perfect. Unfortunately, due to the height of vent and due to the position of the switch, I really had hard time positioning the camera, so the footage is not that great. So, what is the goal today? The goal today is to, as I said, install Shelly 1L switch. This is this switch that supports up to 2 switches or push buttons inside the switch box, let's call it like that, or whatever this box really is called. We'll be connecting it to the live wire coming from the fuse box, and the second wire is going to the device that we want to control. In this case, this will be vent inside the bathroom. For the integration purposes, I will be using 2 methods, but only one method really will be used at the end, and this is the MQTT. Why am I using lately only MQTT for that? First of all, I already have MQTT server, and second of all, I found that most of the Shelly devices have better reaction speed on the MQTT than they have, for example, by using the REST API or CO IoT. But of course, that can also be a personal preference. Okay, so as it says, you can use this as a retrofit device, meaning that you can install it in existing wiring box or switch box. You can control most of the devices, but you have to be careful on the watts or the maximum amps that the device itself is pulling. If you have a device that is using less of 20 watts of electricity, you will have also to install bypass. I did order a kit that includes Shelly 1L and also bypass. The application for that can be anything really you think of. I'm using it in a bathroom to control the vent. That way, I'm able to still use the push button or the switch to control it. But I'm also able to control it from within Home Assistant. For example, if the humidity rises over a certain value, I can trigger the vent and then have the vent work for either certain amount of time, for example 5, 10, 20 minutes, or until the humidity drops down. For the purpose of this video, I will be creating a simple automation that will be triggered by the humidity and will keep the vent running for 5 minutes. So, without further ado, let's get started with the installation of Shelly 1L device. So we have here positive and negative, and they both are off. Shelly bypass fits here. So we will be inserting Shelly bypass here between those 2 wires. Okay, and now let's check the other side. So here what I have to do, I have to remove this cover. And then on this switch, this is the ventilator switch. These are 2 lights. this is the heater that's not connected. So I need to make a bypass. First, those wires that are going inside the switch, they will be going into the Shelly. And the next thing I have to do is also connect this switch to the switch 1 on the Shelly 1L. So let me first remove the cover. Whenever we remodel or redo our apartment, house or whatever, this is not the first apartment we are living, of course, I always replace all the electrical wiring with the new ones, and I always use the Weimar boxes because it allows me to play with the modules as much as I like. Okay. Okay, so these are the wires. So what I have to do now, as you can see, there are 3 blue wires and only 1 black wire. This black wire is used to provide power to all 3 switches here. If you can see, the power line goes here, then it uses this other slot and jumps to the other switch and then to the third switch. So we need to remove this wire here and connect it to the live wire on the Shelly 1L, and this blue wire here, which has a sticker called vent, will be connected to the neutral on. Oh, did I forget to mention that today is the Croatian Army Day, so the airplanes are flying over us. So, and I also have to get 2 short wires that will be used to connect to SW1 for this one to be able to trigger it via the Shelly 1L. This black wire has to go to live here, and this blue wire will have to go to 0. And then switch will be having switch 1 with the S6. So let me prepare everything. Live is going here, then it goes through here to here and here. And this is the, let's call it the after switch live wire going to the vent. Now we have to connect this one SX and SX1s to this switch. We will be pretending that this is alive. This brown, let's pretend that it is black. Yeah, very clever. It will be going, let's see, here. Sorry for that. Okay, this is connected, and then we have also blue wire. Blue wire will be going from this SW1 to switch here. And as I said, good thing about Weimar is that you can replace the modules. So in future I will be replacing this with a push button. For now this is standard switch like this. Okay, so this is now connected, and now let's try and flip the fuse, and God help me. Okay, let's see if this is live. Yep, the light is shining. This one is also live. Okay, so in theory, do you hear? The vent is working. And just put this here. Let me flip the switch. Okay, the fuse has been flipped, and now let's hear. Vent is working. Light 1, light 2. Okay, now let's configure Shelly. First thing you have to do is, of course, select Shelly 1L from the list of available Wi-Fi networks. connect to it. And after you have successfully connected, type in your browser the following IP address: 192.168.33.1. And first thing we need to set up is the IP address and the Wi-Fi. Connect Shelly to the existing network, type in the SSID and the password. I will set the static IP address, fix the network mask, gateway, DNS, and save. We now have to connect to the new IP address of the device. Now our device is connected to the access point or our Wi-Fi network. Let's go quickly to the settings. I always enable Wi-Fi client backup network. Static IP address is always the same, meaning even if it changes the Wi-Fi network, it is the same. But of course, each device has its own separate IP address. Let's quickly update the firmware because there is a newer version. Let's go through the other settings. Power on default, there are various options. Restore last state will restore last state you had when device was powered on. Switch 1 operates the Shelly device depending on the state of the switch 1. Appliance type, I typed ventilator. Button type, this is fun thing to play with. I will be currently leaving it at toggle switch, but you have option of momentary or a push switch. It can be either push to on or push to off. Edge switch, it changes the state of every hit, which is also great. Detach switch means that the switch itself will have no impact on the control or the status of the Shelly relay. And activation switch, you can use it for motion sensor. Any input turns it on and resets auto off timer. The same options apply to button type 2, but I do not have anything connected. Swapped inputs allows you to change the inputs button 1 and button 2. Disable Wi-Fi light status. I will be disabling it because it's currently inside the box and I cannot see. Time zone usually picks up my time zone correctly, so I do not have to fix it. Device name will be Shelly1L ventilator. Channel name I will leave empty. Factory reset of course resets it. Device reboot reboots it. Is device discoverable or not? And power consumption. You can type here the consumption of the device that the device is controlling itself. I will type here 100 watts. It's not 100, but I will leave it at that. In Internet and security, we already set up Wi-Fi mode and Wi-Fi client backup. Wi-Fi client IP roaming. I will be enabling it. It allows switching between the access points, and since two access points with the two different SSIDs that are also two separate devices are available here. Restrict login, I will not be entering username and password. SNMTP, I will not be touching, and in advanced settings, I will enable CO IoT. But I will change multicast to the address of my Home Assistant 192.168.1.35 with the port 5683. Save it. And of course, I will be also enabling MQTT. I have to enter my username for the MQTT server, password, and change the IP address to match the IP address of my MQTT server, 1.35 with the default port 1883. Everything else I will leave as is. And now device should have been added to the Home Assistant. Of course, if you have set up the auto discovery inside Home Assistant. There is option to set timer for off and timer for on. For example, when device is on, turn it off after a certain amount of seconds. Same thing is for the on. Schedule allows you to schedule when you want to turn on or turn off your device based on the timer. And now we have also I/O URL actions. It allows you to trigger or call certain URL depending on the status and action on the shell device, such as button 1 switched, button 2 switched, button 1 long press, button 1 short press, and same for the button 2. Also output switched on and output switched off URL. And that's pretty much it. Let's go to Home Assistant. In this video, I will not be covering on how to set up MQTT auto discovery for Shelly devices inside Home Assistant, since I did cover that multiple times before. If you want to see how you can do that, you can always check the link up here, where I've covered that in a previous Shelly devices video. Let's see if our system now sees Shelly 1L and how to edit and create automations with it. First, let's go to notifications. And let's see if we have new discovered devices. And looks like device is not visible here as a discovered device. That's because probably it was automatically added to the system. Let's check here. 10 devices, and one of the devices is Shelly 1L. If we click here, we see that we have 3 entities here. First one is the relay. If you toggle it, the relay itself will be toggled, and in my case, the ventilator in the bathroom will start. The second one shows you the consumption, currently 0.74 kilowatt hours, and the third one will be enabled, presumably if there is a new version of the firmware. But once again, I will not be using this, instead I will be using MQTT. So let's go to Configuration, Integrations, MQTT, and search here for Shelly, Shelly 1L, and as you can see, once again, Shelly MQTT integration has a lot more entities available than the internal Shelly integration. We have all those integrations plus 6 disabled, which of course you can enable and receive also that data inside Home Assistant. So what we have here: Shelly 1L energy use, firmware update, long push for the second button, over temperature, power consumption, is the relay on or off, short push for the first button connection and a short push for the second button connection. Here you have the temperature of the processor. Remember, this is not the room temperature, this is the temperature inside the box of the hardware. And we also have binary sensors that are disabled. So we have status of the input 0 or input 1 and the status of the input 1, which is really switch 2. We also have information about the IP address, RSSI, SSID, and the uptime. Let's now add this to our Lovelace. I will be adding this to fun stuff. Yes. Let's go to Overview, Fun Stuff, and here we now have all the information except those 2 entities that were just enabled but still didn't pull values, but we can later on add them after we restart Home Assistant. Okay, so now what are your options? As I said, we will be creating 2 simple automations. First automation, we'll check for the state of the relay 0, and if it's turned on for more than 5 minutes, it will turn it off, meaning that no matter if anybody forgets to turn the vent off in the bathroom, after 5 minutes it will be automatically or Home Assistant magically turned off. So let's do that. Configuration, automations, add automation, start with empty automation, vent timer turn off. We will select device, Shelly 1L, and here turned on, meaning that trigger will be when the Shelly device is turned on for 5 minutes. Condition, there will be none, and action will be device Shelly turn off. I've removed the condition, we've saved this, so let's see what we now have done. We have created new automation called vent timer turn off that will check for device Shelly 1L if it's turned on, and if it has been in that state for 5 minutes without any condition or any additional trigger, it will do action device Shelly 1L turn off. This is very simple automation, but we want to add something else. Okay, let's go back to automations. Start with empty automation. This automation will be called humidity vent. So what will be the trigger? The trigger this time will be the bathroom humidity sensor. If it's above 50% for the period of 1 minute, we will be calling an action Shelly 1L to turn it on. This is very simple automation. There are a lot of cavities with it, but it is a good example of what you can do with the Shelly 1L. So you can control it from Home Assistant if it's turned on manually, but also you can use Home Assistant to do automations and turn it on if the value of other sensor has changed. In this case, as I said, we are tracking the status of the device in the bathroom. This is the Xiaomi temperature and humidity sensor. If humidity changes above 50% for the duration of 1 minute, we will be calling this action to turn the Shelly 1L on. You may notice that I didn't create additional Shelly turn off because we already did create additional automation that is checking if the vent is working for 5 minutes. And this automation will also be triggered in this case, meaning that even if this is triggered, every 5 minutes the device itself will be turned on by the Home Assistant. But what's the cavity with this? For example, if you are living in a very humid place, or the summer starts, or there is a rain outside, or whatever, that has impacted your apartment's overall humidity, you may end up with the vent constantly running, or running, switching off, checking for the state, turning on, switching off, etc. So be careful with those automations, and you may add some additional triggers or conditions. For example, one of the conditions can be if the apartment or house humidity is above certain level, then don't trigger this automation. For example, let's look at two cases. One case can be in the rest of the apartment, the humidity is around 35 to 40%. In the bathroom, somebody starts to shower and the humidity goes up to 55%. In this case, the vent will start, it will run for 5 minutes, then automatically turn off, and if humidity is once again over that, it will then start to run once again. So it will have 5 minutes cycles where it's checking if the humidity is above certain threshold. But what if the humidity in all of your house or the apartment is above 50%? It will simply never turn off. So just be careful about that. You can do some other automations or some other conditions or triggers to postpone, delay, prolong, or even fully stop this automation from working. Yeah, you can create additional automation that will be triggered if the apartment humidity is above certain level to disable this automation. And when the apartment humidity or house humidity level drops below a certain percentage to enable this automation. So there are a lot of options as with everything inside Home Assistant. But this is it for this Home Assistant how-to with Bearded Thinker. I really do hope that you did enjoy this video and that you did find it useful. If you have any kind of a comment or a question in regard to this video or any previous video I did, you can always find me on the Discord server, but also feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section below. And don't forget, if you did like this video, please give me a thumbs up because it not just means a lot to me, but it also helps with the YouTube algorithms. If you still haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit the bell button so you get notified on the new videos and of course the streams. And I'll be seeing you next time. Until then, bye bye and have fun.